I've been excited to check this out. The trailer for Netflix's limited series The Madness made it look like a tense and taut thriller. So was it? Media pundit Muncie Daniels must fight for his innocence and his life after he stumbles upon a murder deep in the Poconos woods. As the walls close in, Muncie strives to reconnect with his estranged family and his lost ideals in order to survive. Colman Domingo stars as Muncie Daniels, and I love watching him on screen, just thanks to his sultry and just smooth voice. But in this, he comes across as an everyman. No special skills other than the ability to problem solve and speak in a direct and convincing manner, which does make sense because he's a talking head for CNN. Now, when he decides to rent a house in the Poconos so he can focus on writing his novel, the white man in the home next to the one that he's renting is brutally murdered. And Muncie then finds himself framed and on the run, trying to figure out why he's become embroiled in this crime. Okay, so I'm going to spoil something somewhat, but it's only so that you don't go down the same mental path I did, which then could lead to huge disappointment. And it's not a big spoiler either. By the second episode, I was pretty certain that all of the events that we were watching play out were thanks to Muncie's imagination and that this was his novel playing out within his mind. That is not the case, but I'm going to leave it at that. Now for the performances, Domingo, he's great for the role, especially when he's discombobulated and utterly out of his element as a man on the run. I mean, his intelligence is a huge tool for him, but it's not like he possesses these huge special ops skills. We see he does jujitsu, but outside of that, he's not specially trained in combat, firearms, or any other type of personal defense or weaponry. We also get some engaging performances from Marsha Stephanie Blake, John Ortiz, Tamsin Topolski, Gabrielle Graham, McKinley Henderson, and Alison Wright. Now, this is an 8-episode series with each of the episodes hovering in that 45-ish to 50-minute range. The dynamics of the characters keep the tension pretty high for the majority of the series, with this urgent pursuit always looming for Muncie. And as the mystery goes deeper, he finds himself being chased by several different entities, and that stress helps to keep the show from dragging. That being said, though, the story also works against the pacing to incorporate a lot of rinse and repeat scenarios that then make the show feel longer than it needs to be. The situations start out being very believable, but the longer the story progresses, the arcs and the conflicts become more ridiculous and far-fetched. The story contains an unbelievable amount of plot conveniences and character production. And honestly, that's why I thought what we were watching play out was just Muncie's novel playing in his head. I mean, the character is taken into custody or questioned more than you'd think by law enforcement, only to be released despite evidence of him doing some sketchy things, like firing a gun within a residential area. And then with the conversations and the interactions he has with friends, especially his lawyer friend, they just come across as strange. I mean, the dynamic kept me completely off kilter because their behaviors and conversations felt contrived and unnatural, despite the fact that they're supposed to be great friends. And the friend is a high-priced lawyer. I mean, the way that he just nonchalantly approached Muncie's predicament, it was odd to say the least. There are also strange conversations and engagements that take place between Muncie and John Ortiz's Quiñones. And while I like the air of suspicion that surrounded almost every single discussion Muncie had with others, I wasn't quite sure how to take any of them. Again, just like with his lawyer friend, the dynamics of Muncie's exchanges consistently came across as stunted and way more mysterious than they should be. Then also, though, maintaining some overwhelming conveniences for the character that in reality he would never be afforded. Now, there are so many times that law enforcement acted in ways that is contradictory to common sense, where they would take so many things at face value, leading to large plot conveniences that allowed certain bad guys to continue doing their dastardly deeds. And while I would love to think that all people got the benefit of the doubt from the popo, I do live in the real world where that's very rarely the case, especially with anybody who's not white or typically male. And yeah, I know, this is a piece of fiction, but the show needs to be consistent in what it displays if I'm to continue to buy into the world that they've told me is based on plausibility. As far as the theme of the show goes, I do think it's powerful and unfortunately relevant. I mean, not only from a political stance, which begins to come to light later in the series, but also for a black man to instantly be the suspect of something bad just simply because he was in the vicinity of the event occurring. Prejudices, confirmation biases, and leaps over logic, they're showcased, illustrating how easily injustices can be applied by those in power, or with means. And from that perspective, the series does do an effective job at displaying the unbalanced scenarios that exist in our society. But within that, The story is also confused at the commentary that it wants to pursue. There's the plot line of a black man being framed for a crime and the issues that are heaped on him because of others with power and prestige. There's also a political commentary about the ultra-rich and their influence within the government. Story also places focus on racist hate groups, showing their growing significance and impact in the social zeitgeist. Then, hidden in there somewhere, is a storyline about how far someone is willing to go to fight the injustices of the world. Now, all of these are worthy stories that are more than relevant for today, but they all end up getting muddled and addressed inadequately within the 8 episodes. The series, it just bites off more than it can chew and then flesh out, leaving the entirety to be shallowly and predictably approached. Now, even though the messaging has its problems, some of the story elements were very powerful and engaging. Muncie's relationship with his daughter, estranged wife, and son are intriguing because of all the complexities that are involved with the multiple households. The chemistry between Domingo and Marsha Stephanie Blake as his wife Elena was tense, but also mature and inspiring. I love the way that they communicated, showcasing a lot of respect despite massive disagreements on some fundamentals. And their timing together, it also felt relatable, coming across as this couple who had gone through a lot together and are now trying to figure out the new trajectory of their lives. And I'm not saying that they're all smiles and rainbows, even when they don't agree, but even when it was strained, it wasn't contentious. So for that angle of the story, it was devoid of biting anger. Now, I found myself being irritated with Muncie several times throughout the show. I could understand why he would make certain choices, especially as he worked to change his own life path. But some of the decisions just led to further complications. Again and again, putting him and then all those around him in continuous and growing danger. This is great for story engagement. The chaos and tension are always popping up. But it was conflicting for my connection with the character and then how much I wanted to root for him. Almost every time he was given an out, he'd ignore it and then get himself further enveloped in problems. As you can probably tell, I'm pretty split on how this series was. The acting is wonderful, especially for how the story pushes the characters into absurd and unbelievable situations, and the suspense is consistently evident throughout the episodes. But the storytelling also employs a cyclical tactic of introducing a complexity, giving the character an out, but making them go the opposite just to return to a new and potentially more complex issue. Each of the themes is worthy of focus, tackling social issues that are prevalent and relevant, but because the narrative attempts to encompass them all and provide equal time within the plot, none of them are sufficiently addressed, creating weak arcs that are marred further by plot armor and improbable character conveniences. I respect the show for having its finger on the pulse of current society and endeavoring to create a meaningful conversation. I just wish it would have been more focused to effectively illuminate its points. There's some sex and nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give The Madness 2.5 out of 5 couches. Alright, so what are you binging right now? Anything worth recommending? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.